I specialize in pregnancy loss and miscarriage stillbirth. That is a specific area of my practice that is very specialized. I'm not going to make those situations not happen. It's the acceptance that it happened, it's the grief. How do we honor? How do we remember? How do we talk about it with a neighbor? Those types of things, and also move you through the grieving process by allowing you to have a safe space. So people are like, well, how do I move on? You don't move on, you move through, and you have to know that it's making the load lighter. It's not taken away, it's still there. My name is Caitlin. I am a licensed clinical social worker and I own my own practice in Commack. It is called the Nurture Bloom Therapy for Women, and I specialize in everything women's mental health, from preconception, postpartum, motherhood, everything in between.
First off, welcome to the show. I really
Thank
appreciate
you.
you taking the time to come on. It's funny, just before we came to film, I was just talking to my wife about this and saying how it's a really interesting time that we live in these days where, like, and maybe it was like this in the past, but it's kind of cool that now people can be super niche in their industry. Like, from my understanding, I
Mhm.
don't think 20, 30, 50 years ago there was specific niches of like a motherhood therapist. It was just you were a
Mhm.
therapist, and
Mhm.
I think it's really cool that now we've hit a, I guess, a day and age where
Mhm.
like you can be a super niche
Yeah.
therapist and
Uh-huh.
have a practice like just on that. And I think that's cool. So I want to hear more about that. But let me hear about your before we even get into the whole business. Tell me
Mhm.
about your backstory and everything.
Yeah. So I have been a social worker almost 9 years. I went to Binghamton and I got my bachelor's in psychology, and I always wanted to do research. I actually had done a ton of research in undergrad in a human sexuality lab and a cognition lab, and I really geared myself up to get my PhD. And I sort of had this period of time where I was going to apply for my PhD in counseling or clinical psychology because I always wanted to be a therapist since I was little. And I just sort of didn't want to do it for so long and so many years. So I researched and talked to other people about how I could be a therapist. And another pathway was to be a social worker, which is really interesting because not a lot of people know that therapists are mostly social workers. There is licensed marriage and family therapists and mental health counselors, but social workers also, there's an area where you could be a therapist. And once I learned about social work, I fell in love. I just completely felt it was exactly it was exactly made for a person like me, which is a very passionate, enthusiastic person who wants to really make a difference.
Mm.
So, social work was just amazing. I went to NYU and I had such fantastic clinical experience, which is one-on-one experience. So I always knew I wanted to be a therapist. And I sort of landed in the hospital working at Mount Sinai Hospital as a social worker for spinal cord injury. So I had done that for about 2 years, and it was real, in the trenches, crisis
Mm.
intervention, providing bedside support, and helping patients leave the hospital safely. And a position opened up on maternity, labor and delivery, and antepartum at the hospital. And so I took it, and that was in 2019, and that's when I started specializing in perinatal mental health. So perinatal mental health, it's sort of like what is that? What does that mean? And so when we think about perinatal, we think of, preconception to pregnancy to postpartum and even beyond that into motherhood. So my specialty is women's health, specifically mothers, mothering, and also infertility,
Mm.
pregnancy loss, and that also comes into play there too, birth trauma, things like that. So that's sort of like how I landed
It,
in
it,
perinatal.
it was very interesting, and I think it's very, very needed from a
Yeah.
lot of things. I think it's very easy from just the outside. I appreciate you explaining that actually as well, because I
Mhm.
think from the outside, I think that just to be frank, it's
Mhm.
easy to I guess pigeonhole you just from the viewer, like seeing you online or something like that.
Mhm.
It's like, oh, if you just have postpartum anxiety or
Mhm.
depression, but there's a lot that goes into like
Mhm.
infertility or
Yep.
loss or all those things, which
Yep.
are, my wife and I struggled with infertility. In fact, like we got
Mhm.
pregnant with my first 3 days before our infertility.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it took us two
Oh
years.
my gosh, okay.
And then 3 days
Wow.
before our infertility appointment, we found that we were pregnant with our
Wow.
first. And then the second, we had to do IUI.
IUI,
We did three
yeah.
rounds of IUI. So,
Yeah, so
um,
the reproductive trauma there.
yeah, it's Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it definitely puts a strain on the
Yes.
marriage, and,
Mhm.
it just changes the dynamic of sex and
Totally.
everything,
Yes,
and
intimacy, yes. I think that people forget that not everybody can just have sex and have a baby, and so that's the notion that's normalized, right, and expected. But when that doesn't happen or things don't go as planned, well, what happens, right? And so my specialty is all the yucky, horrible stuff that may happen in the in between. And then it's wonderful working with families who then go through that process, right? Maybe some reproductive trauma. Then they're anxious because they finally get pregnant, right? And like it's like I can't even imagine
Mm,
what would happen if I lost this baby. And then moving into postpartum. Okay, now I have this baby. I want to be perfect. I want to do everything right. Then moving into maybe out of postpartum to the year to 2 year mark, and it's like, well, who am I now? And am I ready to gear up to possibly open myself up to do this again? Which is it's a whole process, and it's really not it's just not something that people talk about because it's very taboo, and it's nice when people can kind of say, like, "This does happen to people, and this is real life."
I'd be really interested to know. I don't think the word is normalizing it.
Yeah.
I mean, it is normalized, but, like, I didn't even know, I guess, how do you get your message out there so that people, like, I didn't even know that there was a therapist about this,
Mhm.
and, like, it would have been really helpful because everything you just described
Yeah,
was my
yeah.
marriage. It was,
Yes, yes.
"Wow, this really sucks that we can't get
Yes.
pregnant," and the comparison of, like,
Mhm,
"Wow, what's wrong with
mhm.
us?"
Yep, yep.
And, but then of, like, "Oh, wow, we are pregnant,
Mhm,
and we don't wanna lose this
mhm,
baby," and
mhm.
that was my wife's labor and delivery nurse, so she already knows everything that can go wrong in
Yep,
general because she sees it all the
1000%.
time.
Yep, mhm.
But then on top of that, of, like, then we had the baby, and then you care so much about that baby that you don't want anything to go wrong. But then trying for the second, we did have miscarriages.
Mm.
Um, so then when you finally get pregnant again, it's like, well, now you're really white
Yeah.
knuckling, like, I don't, and it's just it. You're right there. I guess there is, in hindsight, there is a bit of trauma that you don't even really realize.
Yeah, and when I say that word to when clients come in and I say to them, "You've experienced trauma," it's actually a moment of clarity because trauma does not have to be cut and dry. It doesn't have to be, this we call it big T trauma, which would
Mm,
be, a war, a natural disaster, a sexual assault, physical violence. Those are big T traumas, but there could be little t trauma, which are little things that happen over time that still wear away. It's almost like the big T trauma is like this big boulder. Take this boulder and you throw it at the windshield, it breaks. Well, what happens if I start throwing pebbles at the windshield over time? It's still going to break. So it's still there, right? But also naming that, you could be all of these things, but also understanding these experiences take away from who you are and what you expected.
yeah.
It's a lot about the expectations, but definitely, yeah, people do not know that there are specialized people out there that
Mm,
train and I have special certifications and lots of training on how to treat women
yeah.
in this period of life.
So what does that practically look like? So
Mhm.
hypothetically, we found you 2 years ago or a year ago
Mhm.
when we probably needed you most.
Yeah, yeah.
What are the sessions like? What is I say, hey, I call you, send you an email,
Mhm.
DM me, whatever the case may be. Like,
Yeah.
what does that process look like?
Yeah. So in my therapy practice, I am completely individualized. So I always have a conversation with a potential client before I actually work with them. That's to protect the client and make sure that the client is getting the best possible fit and make sure that I could help them in what they need. So if I'm getting on the phone with you, I want to hear a little bit about your story. I want to share a little bit about my approach,
Mm,
my expectations, and things like that in the therapy room, the style of therapy that I do, and specifically how we're going to move together for our goals and our treatment, right? And also normalizing that, like, I'm so happy that you found me and this was so hard for you, and I'm going to get you better.
mm,
Now, I'm not going to change your circumstances, but I'm going to help you cope better so you could live better in your reality. I specialize in pregnancy loss and miscarriage stillbirth. That is a specific area of my practice that is very specialized. I'm not going to make those situations not happen. It's the acceptance that it happened. It's the grief. How do we honor? How do we remember? How do we talk about it with a neighbor? Those types of things, and also move you through the grieving process by allowing you to have a safe space.
Yeah.
So I think that, people are like, well, how do I move on? You don't move on, you move through.
Mm.
You- And you have to know that it's making the load lighter. It's not taken away. It's still there.
I think one thing really important that you're saying that I think that people, a lot of people, not just in specific to this
Yeah.
circumstance or this little T trauma, like you
Mhm.
said, I think that so many people are looking to remove it or
Mhm.
they have a problem accepting it. And I think that one of the biggest things in life is acceptance of and anything, and anything. Like
Mhm.
even the fact that like I just a silly note, like not obviously as but like I'm not. I just got funny note. I just got my new license because I need the real ID to travel, and I looked at the real ID that the photo they just took and my old ID. I'm like, I look like I served 2 prison sentences since last time I had a photo. And like that being said, it's all the dad weight I put on it, whatever the case may be. So like, in order to change it, I have to actually accept the fact that hey, I've gained maybe a couple pounds. Like, and if I want to change it, you have to accept it. And even as silly as that, like, and then obviously getting bigger and bigger,
Mhm.
like you have to accept that there's a problem in order to actually change that problem, or not change, but address the problem and
Right.
hopefully heal from the problem. You have to accept the fact that your arm might be infected,
Mhm.
so you can actually heal.
Correct, exactly. And I actually use that sort of analogy a lot with my clients about why they've felt so bad for so long. And I sort of say to them, it could be postpartum anytime, well, you haven't gotten the right treatment. It's sort of like your arm is broken and you're not getting treatment. So it's just hanging there. It's not going to get better. You need the right specialized treatment to get better. And that's what I could provide with my expertise and knowledge and all of that. The second part about, moving through, it's also acceptance and the grieving process. Grieving, well, if I have to accept this, that means this about my life. And I really thought this was going to happen with my life instead. So it's grieving, it's honoring, it's respecting, it's saying, this is the plan I really wanted, but I'm like over here, but not internalizing that. So what tends to happen is, well, then I'm so bad. I'm broken. What's wrong with me? My body is not made for this. I'm not meant to have kids. I'm not meant to, do any of those things. And well, that's not true.
How much do I owe you for the end
Yeah.
of this session for the way
Oh
I
yeah. It's reversing here.
because it's yeah man I
Yeah.
have to we spoke about beforehand that I'm a musician
Yes.
and I've written a lot of songs in general but like
Oh,
I have a specific in the process of this
yeah, experience.
having trouble getting
Mhm.
pregnant, actually getting pregnant,
Mhm.
having a loss.
Mhm.
They're all different songs that I've written. I'd love to share them with
Wow.
you
Yeah, so I'd
and
love
hear
to
your
hear
thoughts on
them.
them.
Yes, yes.
Let's backtrack a little. There's a
Yeah.
couple questions that I have actually that
Yeah,
are
we can go
very
really
interesting.
deep and I
Yeah.
could see how I'm a therapist, right?
So I come from a family of my mom and sister are both social
Oh,
workers.
really?
My mom's a marriage and family therapist
Ah,
or social therapist, I
yeah,
guess.
there, yeah.
But she has, she's, I don't know. There's a lot of tiers in there and
Mhm.
special degrees,
Mhm.
and so I don't know exactly. But she focuses on marriage and family
Oh,
therapy. I know
wow.
that. But she's is also a social worker. But
Mhm.
she just took all these. I don't know. And then my sister has a very, I think, the same degree.
Okay.
First question is related to social work in the hospital. You mentioned you started with I think spinal injury or
Yeah, spinal cord
spinal
injury.
cord. So what is a social worker essentially doing in that?
Yeah. So when we think of social work, we think of two different areas, right? And a lot of people don't know this. They think social worker is correlated with child protective services, which
Hmm.
it is in some way.
Yeah, very
I
interesting.
have a mandate to report, right? But that's not where I'm working under. So we have macro social work, which is when we think of macro level, we think of government, we think of organizations, nonprofits, those agencies, social service agencies that you might find social workers doing macro level work, right? How can we see this problem in the community? How can we address it? Homelessness, food poverty, poverty in general, all those things. And then we have micro social work, which is one-on-one work with individuals and families. So I do that aspect. But in the hospital, my role was really towing the line. So I worked under the hospital organization, and their goal is to discharge patients safely. So my goal was to find a safe discharge plan for patients that came into the hospital. So what does that mean?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. What does that mean?
Safe is a broad statement.
Safe is a broad statement, right. So safe, right? It's, yeah, it's a good question. When I,
Physically safe, emotionally safe, like what does that look like,
it
I guess?
could, yeah, it can mean emotionally and physically safe. And it could mean providing the correct items that the patient might need to go home. For instance, I'm talking about, let's just say when I had experience in spinal cord injury, I would have a patient come in with a spinal cord injury, and that means they're completely paralyzed, right?
Mm.
And it could be in a different area of their body. They could be from the neck down, they could be from the waist down. And they come into the hospital, they have this injury. Well, what does that mean for them when they leave the hospital? Where are they going? What services does the family need? Does their insurance cover it? We have to get the insurance approval. So there's a lot of, it's basically moving the patient to the next level of care, which could either be home or to a facility.
Mm.
So I would help get patients into rehab centers, or if they were appropriate and they could, they would go home with equipment, and we'd make sure it wasn't a walk up, it was elevator accessible. We might write letters to the landlord to get them moved on the first
Oh, wow.
floor. We would provide advocacy in order to make sure that the patient is as physically safe as possible. Now, emotionally safe, providing crisis intervention to the family, right? Your child, they might be, their mother might be
Yeah.
6 years old and their child's 30 getting a spinal cord injury. Well, think about all of that level. And so you're providing that crisis intervention, family meetings with the doctors, equipment that might need to be set up, insurance. Some patients come to the hospital without insurance, so we need to make sure they have insurance, and then make sure the insurance approves the authorization for the rehab. And also, so that's sort of that process, but also psychosocial. When I say psychosocial, I mean things like substance use, mental health, homelessness, um, food insecurity, those things that we'd address.
Mm.
Child protective services,
Yeah, very interesting.
very broad.
Very broad.
So anyone would come into the hospital, and we are a part of the team. We're helping them,
Yeah.
and so the doctors don't have the time to address some of these psychosocial concerns, right? They wouldn't know maybe how to apply for food benefits or have a patient have insurance, but it would impact their plan of care. The patient doesn't have insurance, how are they gonna get medication to make sure the problem doesn't come back?
Mm.
Yeah,
Very interesting.
very
Very, yeah,
multi-layered.
very, very.
Mhm,
Piggybacking on another
mhm,
question that I had, I want to pick, like one
mhm.
of the first things you said when you were in school, one of the things you were super interested in that we worked in was a human sexuality lab.
Yeah,
What in the world is that?
yes. So I had, so there were different types of research labs at Binghamton University, which is SUNY upstate. And this research lab specifically had a developmental psychologist that ran the lab, and it was on the study of human sexuality. My research was actually in music videos and sexualizing music videos. I don't know if you remember the music video with Robin Thicke, and it was a very sexualized,
Blurred lines?
blurred lines, yes, using women as props.
I don't
Using
really remember the video, but
Okay,
I do
yeah,
remember it being
it was controversial.
okay. So can you explain
Yes,
the video and then
sure. So the video used a lot of women's bodies as props and objects for the male viewer.
what does that mean though?
Yeah.
Like it
So
was an actual woman or it was
it was
like
an actual woman that would act as a table.
oh, I see. Okay,
So their bodies would be used as objects
I
in the
see.
music
I see.
video and objectifying women, right? And we looked at a lot of sexualization in music videos, and actually looked then into parody videos. So it was very popular. This was around 25, no, sorry. Between 2012 and 2015, these parody videos on YouTube were very popular, where people would make a parody of the video. But what ended up happening with a lot of these parody videos is they would have men dress up as women, and that was supposed to be funny. So it was using gender as humor. So it was sort of like this experience of, it's a little bit complicated, a little bit hard to a little bit hard to explain, but we looked at the sexuality of objectifying women in music videos, and then we looked at, why is it funny for men to dress as women?
Mm.
And why is that something that's funny?
Mm-hmm.
Versus, you know, gender norms and standards.
Very
So
interesting.
that was the research that I
Some high
did.
level questions though. I'm curious the answers you found with the objectifying women inside of music videos.
Yeah.
What did you find in that research?
Well, we found that a lot of parodies were using these objectified videos. So we did find that a lot of women were being objectified in music
Sure.
videos,
Yeah.
and there was a high degree of sexual content. And then also there were these parody videos that were made as well that were mostly using gender.
So now how does that affect the human psyche? Like what's then the next step of that? Like
Yeah, so how does it
yeah.
contribute to the bigger
Yeah,
picture?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, definitely about gender and gender norms, that it's funny for men to dress up as women. Why is that funny?
Mhm.
And why can't a man wear a skirt? Why does it have to be a parody? Why does it have to be funny? As we've moved in society in 2026, things are a lot different. There's men wearing makeup and things like that in their day-to-day lives, but in that time period, it was not something that was socially acceptable, and therefore it was like a funny trope to
Mhm.
do. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's
Where
just
you could
interesting.
maybe think back to your high school, a kid might have dressed up as a
Sure.
girl or a funny character, and it was so funny and hysterical. Well, why is dressing up as a woman funny?
Yeah. Yeah, it's
Right?
interesting conversation for sure.
Yeah, so
Very
just
interesting.
gender norms, society, and media. As media becomes popular, why are women being objectified in media? And why is that normal to use a woman's body as a piece of like an objective item in a music
Mhm.
video? Like, why is that sexual and funny to have a woman be a chair or a
Yeah.
table?
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that
Right,
either. Yeah,
right. It's
very interesting.
objectification.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And why
yeah.
it's become normal and
Right.
all
Hmm.
that stuff.
Right. Like, why is that allowed? Why was that acceptable? And why was that popular?
Yeah. I don't know. That's very
Mhm.
interesting.
With the words blurred lines too
Sure.
about consent. Consent was
Is that what the song was about?
yes, like that consent is blurry. That it's not yes or no.
Interesting.
Mhm.
All right, moving
Yeah.
on then.
So not
Let's
to like,
yeah, no, it's
create a
it's interesting.
yeah.
I asked the question, so
Yeah, yeah, there you go. Happy to
all right,
talk about it.
let's talk back about your business, and
Mhm.
I'm curious, I guess we talked about the niche that
Yeah,
is super niched, and um, do you do you find that helpful or hurtful that it's a super niche business?
very helpful. So the way that therapists are moving is towards a niche. Why?
Interesting.
Because I can't possibly treat 150 different conditions.
Well,
Well, sure, you can come to me for, different things
hmm.
that I don't treat, and I'm sure I could help you, but can I really treat you?
That's very interesting. And I guess that's how science or the healthcare system is going in general,
Mhm.
because you look at 200 years ago, and the doctor was the doctor.
Yep.
You had the flu, you had an infection, you had hookworms, and it was his job to figure it out.
Mhm.
Now you go to your back doctor, you go to your eye doctor, you go to your hand doctor, you go to
Mhm.
the skin. It's become super specialized, which to some degree is good, but also there's bad parts of it too. The fact that like if you have an ear issue, it could really be something else, and they're
Mhm.
only focusing on the ear, right? Sometimes they're only treating the symptom as opposed to the actual uh, issue.
Correct, yeah, like holistically.
Yeah, but it is interesting though about the specialist. I mean, 200 years ago, like the Freudian concept, there was one therapist.
Mhm.
You'd lay on the thing, and
Yeah, yeah.
but it's really interesting actually that it's becoming more specialized, and you can
Mhm.
treat better as you become more specialized.
Yeah, 1,000%, because I wanna make sure that patients get better,
Sure.
and I wanna make sure that I wanna make sure clients get better, and I wanna make sure that they leave better than how they came into my office.
Yeah.
And so with my expertise and my knowledge of working bedside after I had done, working in spinal cord injury, I had moved into labor and delivery, postpartum, and antepartum, which is I did a whole lot of stuff there. But I understand the experience of what the hospital is like and how that system could further add another layer of trauma, right? Loss, birth trauma, high risk pregnancy, mental health conditions, substance use, child protective services, all of those things. It's very important to be specialized as a provider because you want to be able to treat your patient and you want to be able to provide quality care. So I do not accept insurance in my practice for a variety of reasons. But one of them is I don't want my care to be dictated on how I'm going to treat my
Mm.
patient and my client. Insurance companies like to dictate care and say, well, they don't meet medical necessity and all this stuff, and that's very hard to treat a client when it's just one issue. It's
When you
not
put
one
in a
issue. It's
box, yeah.
yeah, it's so many other things. And as especially for women, as we move through each chapter of their life, different things come up, right? The newborn stage is different than the toddler mom stage, right? Is different than the adolescent stage. And so constantly there's new challenges that women have in the parenting journey,
Mm.
right? And so how can I possibly only provide 3 months of therapy to someone in that period of
Yeah.
time where things are so changing? So that's what the insurance. The other thing is that not taking insurance allows me to see a lower caseload of clients per week, which allows me to provide individualized
Mm.
care that's really specific to each client. So I have the time to think about treatment planning. I have the time to call their prescriber and advocate for them. I have the time to really dedicate to them and not be burned out, which if you take insurance, you pretty much are burned out. I mean, it's hard to take insurance and see a low caseload
Yeah.
just for fees and things like that. So it's nice when I can see, my set amount of clients and really provide them the one-on-one care.
Yeah. It's interesting that you say that because I had a different industry, but he's a physical therapist, and
Mhm.
he said verbatim the same exact thing. He
Yeah.
said he worked when he got out of college. He worked in a practice that took insurance, and he
Mhm.
said that people were just a number, and you really just had to get them in and get
Yep.
them out because it wasn't cost effective to keep them in and
Right.
actually. So he's like, you couldn't really treat the
Mhm.
patient because
Mhm.
you kind of just slap the band-aid on and say, okay, we got to get to the next because
Yep.
otherwise we lose money and we can't stay in practice.
Mhm.
And it's better to do something than nothing at all, right?
Right.
Because if we go out of business, we're never doing nothing at all. So let's
Right.
do something.
Yeah.
And he left that and started his own and said, we're not going to accept insurance, which means we can't help everybody.
Right.
However, the people that we can help, we can really help. And we
Right.
can spend whatever an hour with them
Mhm.
and do a full diagnostic and say, it's
Mhm.
actually not your knee that's the issue. It's actually something in your hip that's causing your knee to hurt. But that would have never been found if, and it's very the same
Right.
exact concept.
The only thing is that then people who are privileged and able to access care are the ones that could afford that.
So what's the alternative? Like, what's the
That's
answer to that?
difficult. The answer is the insurance companies need to stop dictating care and pay us more money.
Sure. Yeah.
And
I
so
mean,
if
that's a,
that
yeah.
if you wanna be angry at anyone,
Yeah.
it's angry at the
That's,
system, right?
yeah.
So not to, like, make a
No,
full thing, but
it's the truth, and I think that it's real. I think that people are so short-sighted in who they get angry with these
yeah.
days.
Mhm.
They're like, "Oh, it's not the rich and privileged." I'm
I
like,
know.
"Yeah, sure, they can't afford it, but it's really not their fault that they can afford it. Why don't you take it with the people that are preventing care?" It's
Mhm.
actually,
Yeah, there's
it's just
also a
interesting.
a thing about social workers in general that, I'm a social worker and I need to help everyone. And so I understand that, and that's one of my values and, advocacy and all of that. And I'm able to do that in other ways. But with my practice, this is how I'm able to because it is something that I need to make sure that I'm providing quality care for because it's my name, my clients, and if I don't provide quality care, then what am I doing?
Mhm. What does advocacy look like?
Advocacy, yeah, advocacy in the social work side, it definitely looks like it's hard. It's hard because we have all different types of people from all different backgrounds that we see, right? And it means advocating for, human rights, basic human rights,
Who
making
are you advocating to?
so when I say advocacy, I mean making it known where I stand or, in the hospital system, advocating for
Hmm.
different, areas of population. It means policy change. It means all different types of things.
So the gatekeeper is essentially like whoever's making decisions, saying, "Hey," trying to change their mind, essentially.
Right. So you might send a letter to, a representative, you might call them, those types of
Very
things.
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And be involved in that. That is an area of social work. I wish that I could dedicate more time
Hmm.
to, but it definitely is an area of social work.
What is the practicality of opening your own practice? Like,
Yeah.
what does that even look like? Say, hey,
Mhm.
tomorrow I'm gonna branch out on my own as a social worker. Where do you
Mhm.
even begin?
Yeah, so, you have to have an LCSW, which is a licensed clinical social worker. That means that I've done 3,000 hours or 2,000, the fact check, 2,000 or 3,000, I can't remember off the top of my head, hours post-master's. So I got my master's, I had my LMSW, licensed Master of Social Work. took a test, got the license, and then 3 years after that, I was eligible and I applied with all my hours that I had done with my supervisor at the hospital. And then I have to get approved, then take a test, and then you have to be an LCSW.
Mm.
So I got my LCSW in about 5 years ago. And so that is the highest level of social worker. There used to be LCSWR, but it was taken away. So with the LCSW, you have to have that, and then you could either be a sole proprietor, or you can open a professional corporation. And so I opened a professional corporation and got everything. Well, actually, backtrack. I started as a sole proprietor, and then I eventually established a PC
Mm.
last year. So,
PC is
professional corporation. So,
okay.
if you are a business owner that provides services or professional services, you have to have a professional corporation.
Different than like an S corp or C corp, or
You can elect as an S corp, but it's not an LLC. So you in New York, you could either be a PLLC, professional limited liability company, or a professional corporation. And it has to be because we are considered professionals.
oh,
So if a
interesting.
doctor opened a practice, it would be a PLLC or a PC.
Hmm.
It wouldn't be an LLC because you
Very-
can't provide
Yeah.
services to humans under an LLC, like the way I do.
Yeah. Very interesting.
Care.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very
So
interesting.
yeah. So I mean, I opened my practice in 2024 in May, and
Where do you begin?
yeah,
Okay, I open my practice. Now what? Where do you
yeah,
find your first
yeah.
a client? Where do
Clients.
you find you? Where do you find? How do you get out there? Where do you like?
Yeah.
How do you grow the business? What does that look like?
Yeah. So I was really fortunate that I had come from a group practice that specialized in maternal mental health. And so a majority of my clients stayed with me. So they actually transitioned with me to the group practice. Oh, sorry, they
From the group
transitioned
practice.
from the group practice to my practice with me, which was really wonderful and amazing. And I was so lucky. So it was actually pretty smooth of a process. I talked to my friends who helped me set up my electronic medical record. I thought about the documents that I need, consulted with an attorney, those types of
Mm.
things to make sure I got, practice insurance. And at that time, I was taking insurance. And so I applied for insurance panels and we just hit the ground running. And I was busy,
So
busy.
now, 2 years later, at what point did you realize, hey, I want to stop accepting insurance?
I stopped in January 1st, 2025, I stopped accepting insurance. But what that means is that clients do have out-of-network benefits
Mm.
that they could access care. So a lot of my clients are getting reimbursed by their insurance company just with their out-of-network benefits. So I decided, yeah, January 1st, I stopped accepting insurance, and it was scary for me.
Yeah,
It was
I'm
very
sure.
scary. And so what happened was some of my clients condensed. I had discharged a few, which means that they no longer
Okay.
needed therapy. They met their clinical goals. Some clients had condensed to biweekly, and I was seeing like probably 12 to 15, which is a huge decrease from I was seeing about 25 a week.
So now what?
So then last year, I just hit the ground running with marketing. So I had already been doing social media marketing in 2024 when I opened my practice,
Organic or paid?
organic.
Okay.
Yeah. So I had opened an Instagram account and I started posting like static posts. Then I went to a therapist meetup and everybody was making like cute, fun reels.
A therapist meetup. Very
Mhm.
interesting.
Mhm. A therapist meetup. Yeah, yeah. And
The
so
more I have these interviews, the more I realize how much I don't know about the
the
world. And there's
world.
just so, I mean, have you ever, this is totally random. I want
Yeah.
to hear more about your thing, but you ever heard about teachers? I think it's called Teachers Pay Teachers.
Yes.
I had never heard about it. And
That's amazing
my
though.
previous
That's
guest
so funny.
was, works in that industry, and it's essentially like an Etsy for teachers.
Yes,
And I was like,
yes. So
this is
cool.
so
I
cool.
know
But
you
like,
would
I had
never know
no
unless
idea
you're in the
about it. Yeah,
niche.
exactly.
Yeah,
It was
right.
it's just
Just
interesting
like
just
I
to
wouldn't
learn
know
about
where
it.
to buy a camera
Well,
and
fair, I
things.
guess.
Yeah.
That's a fair statement.
Everybody is like, and we're all like focused in our
Yeah, I
lanes.
guess you just don't realize how many lanes there are. It's a very
Right.
interesting concept. But I
Yeah.
apologize. It's just interesting that
Yeah.
like, oh
It's
wow, of course there'd be a therapist
therapist
meetup.
meetup. Yeah. So there's a
Oh.
lot of therapist meetups and networking events. And so I decided like I'm going to bite the bullet and I'm going to start making reels. So I started paying for somebody who is a social media marketer for therapists.
Oh wow, cool.
And she sends out, I joined a membership and she would send out different Reels ideas
Wow,
to get me
that's a really
started.
interesting idea.
She makes, side note, she makes a lot of money doing it.
Locals in
She,
California,
yeah,
like,
she's based in Florida, but she formerly had a practice in New York.
oh,
And she runs a multi six-figure practice coaching,
that's a
helping
really
therapists.
interesting business concept.
Yes. She posts her things, like, her Reels membership, which is what I joined, probably takes in about 15 to 20 grand a month.
Can you tell me a little bit of what you
Reels
received from it?
membership.
What you received from it?
What I received?
Yeah.
I got, like, 4 or 5, I think maybe 4 reels, real ideas with hooks that you would just put X, Y, and Z, like, plug and play, the trending audio,
Oh, wow.
and yes, and then that actually started being popular. There's somebody else that does that too.
It's a
A
great
a
bit.
lot.
It sounds easier on her end in the sense of
Yeah.
like, oh, she's just, but like there is
Mhm.
actually quite a bit of work that goes into it. But
Right.
what a interesting. I mean, that's my interest. That's why my
That's your
ears kind of
yes.
perked up. I'm like, oh, that's an
Yes,
interesting
and I
concept.
actually pay someone now that she for a monthly fee, she edits all my videos.
Sure.
Now
Yeah.
I do,
Yeah.
but I didn't before.
Yeah.
So I wanted to get started. So she was perfect for me. I was like, I don't know what to say. I don't know what to do. I'm nervous behind the camera.
That's
And
so
so
interesting. That's a great business concept.
yeah, so she had the Reels membership, and that was wonderful and amazing. And I just kept doing social media, and I keep plugging along and going, and like,
And what were the results you found?
yeah, so it's interesting. So last year I do a therapy wrapped every year, like a
Okay.
Spotify wrapped. And so last year I so I started my practice in so when I think of last year, I'm thinking 2024. So 2024, May 2024 to December 2024, when I had done the Spotify wrapped, I want to say I had like maybe 500 or 600 followers. And then when I did it this year, I have like a little over 7,000.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's like a
Yeah.
13x growth in a
Yeah.
year.
Yeah. Well, so what I went once I started seeing more time on my business side, as I saw less clients, I really went full in with the posting every day and coming up on stories and
Now, do
mhm.
you have clients that come from social media now?
Yes. Yes.
In my industry, the more I get more and more frustrated
Mhm.
because I keep hearing stories like this, and people don't think social media works, and myself included
Mm.
sometimes too. Like people think, and this is a compliment. Like people think you need 1 million followers to make a business,
Oh,
and like here you said you have 7,000, which is a lot,
mhm.
but it's also not 1 million, or even
Right.
100,000, or even like 15,000,
Mhm.
right? You see an account that has 15,000, like, oh, it's a decent amount. Oh, you 20,000, 50,000, but you think that you need that to make all this money.
Mhm.
And realistically, like one of the clients I had recently was like, hey, there was a restaurant, and they were like, we made a reel about the Sunday special and it sold out. And
Mhm.
I'm like, that's amazing. Like that's the goal. Like you sold out of the item. And like he's like, and what I said to him is like, that's like what you don't realize is you think that a posting's 1 million views, but if you got that 1 million views, you wouldn't even be able to service that.
Right.
We got whatever 500 views and it sold out. But if you got 1 million, you're like, you couldn't handle that. So like, what's even the point of even wanting that? So it's
Right.
really, really interesting that like now,
Mhm.
granted, like if you had 1 million followers,
Mhm.
you'd be making income of like like sponsorships and stuff. Like it's a little different, but it's just people need to shift their mindset of like, oh, I really don't need 1 million followers or 500,000.
Mhm.
Like if I sell out of my steaks every week, like
It's
that's
perfect.
literally the best you could do as a business or
Yep.
as a restaurant. But
Yep.
I'm sorry, that's my
Yeah,
little
no, to
rant because
have a
it just
full practice for me, so I see about 18 to 20 clients a week,
well,
private pay, which is insanely and amazing and wonderful and something I never thought would be possible. But exactly what you're talking about is that when I go on social media, I am smart about it. I do have a lot of friends that have a lot of followers, but they're not necessarily converting to clients. So I don't really know, in their marketing strategy how that might work. The other thing is you could have 50,000 followers, but if 49,000 of them are not in New York or where you're licensed,
mm,
you can't see them.
hmm
So then some therapists create like coaching businesses where they're doing these coaching sessions or coaching programs.
interesting. So I
Mhm.
guess that also is why we've had a rise of coaches
Yeah.
because you're not technically a therapist anymore, even though you're doing like quote unquote therapy.
Yeah.
Very interesting loophole. I like that. That's
Yeah,
pretty
you're doing
clever, actually.
coaching and you're coaching and there's certain legalities with that.
Sure, very
But
interesting.
you could
Definitely a
have a
loophole.
coaching course and have a lot and make a lot of money. So multiple streams of income. And I do know a few people that do that. But with the marketing, I always say if you're speaking to everyone, you're speaking to no one. And so you have to be speaking to your ideal client and think about, because I do business coaching and I do business consulting for therapists that want to grow their practice.
You are the coach or you receive coaching?
I'm the coach.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so backtrack. I had a business coach for a long time, the one that did the Reels membership,
Mm.
and I was part of her community for a while. But now I also offer business consulting for practitioners that want to grow their practice on social media. And I always say, who is your ideal client? Who do you want to serve? What do they look like? What are they about? What is their pain points? What are they saying to you on the phone? What are the things that come up again and again in session? And listen, I'm a mom, and so I have a lot of knowledge base on that experience too to speak to. And so sometimes I do things funny and sometimes I don't, but you can kind of see how in some of my social media, it's speaking to sort of the same issues again and again.
Mm.
Also, not taking your foot off the gas. Just keep it going, slow and steady. Some days I get thousands of views, some days I get 500 views, but it doesn't matter. I'm still showing up, I'm still trying, and guess what? Maybe out of that 500 views, maybe that there speaks to one client and helps them or one potential person
Or
that.
converts one person.
Right, exactly, and that's worth it in the end, and honestly, exactly right. I don't need it really necessarily for my business. I I don't need to be making videos all the
It
time
would
for my
change your
business.
business if you started getting millions of views. It'd be very different. You'd have
Yes,
a different business model at
it'd
that
be a
point.
right,
But for what you're
exactly.
doing currently, you don't need a million views on
Right.
each thing. Now, I'm not saying it would be bad.
Yeah.
It would just totally change it. You would focus
Mhm.
more on that than you would actually probably on the client side because you
Right.
couldn't handle 1,000 clients.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. So yeah, and I can't serve those clients either. So yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, I want to speak on the ideal client.
Mhm.
Uh, two things about it. I would like to hear about who your ideal client is,
Mhm.
and I want to make a comment on that. Is the previous guest I just had on my podcast? We had a really interesting conversation about what the ideal client is,
Oh,
and
okay. Mhm.
what she found through her, we talked about marketing, all this
Mhm.
stuff, and she's like, a lot of people are marketing to their ideal client, and they fabricate who they think their ideal client is. And this, I'm not saying this is for you, but it could be for you. I'm just more so saying
Mm.
for the audience if they haven't heard that other episode, they think, okay, who is my ideal client? We'll put it in my terms, like who is my ideal client for this
Mm.
podcast, right? Like who is my ideal guest, my
Mhm.
or a viewer. My
Mhm.
ideal viewer would be like an entrepreneur that would watch this and be like, oh, I really enjoy what the guest is talking
Mhm.
about. Like I want to see more of what they're talking about.
Mhm.
I want to learn more about it. That's who I fabricated
Mhm.
as in my mind as the ideal client. But that client, that person may never exist. The only way to find your real ideal client is go back to your previous clients and see who they really were. And that's your ideal client because you actually converted them. They actually, this person makes, she is a speech therapist essentially,
Mm.
but she makes content for speech therapists.
Mm.
So like so instead of like Northport High School speech therapists having to create content every day, like because it's a lot of work, she'll just become part of her subscription plan. And every week gets new content, and she can use that in her classroom, which is a really interesting business model. But point of the story is like instead of trying to fabricate who she thinks the client is, she's like, well, who's buying my stuff, and why don't I just market more towards that person? And I just found that was like,
Mm.
yeah, like
Mhm.
who's watching the podcast instead of me trying to find who I think it is, like just see who's watching it and then go there. It could be the same. You could have gotten it
Mhm.
right, but you could
Mhm.
have also gotten it very wrong. I just found it really interesting. I wanted to
Yeah.
share that because I thought it was a real,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, and I think I definitely follow that, and it's speaking to what your clients are what your current clients, we call them pain points. What are the things that they're repeatedly talking about?
Mm,
And so also where do I get fulfillment in my therapy sessions with them? Where do I feel like that was a great session? We really hit up on this, or we really worked through this one issue. So I kind of when I look at the ideal client, I do think of a client in mind,
yeah.
who this would speak to. And then it's a feedback loop,
Mm,
right? So if it's postpartum anxiety and I'm thinking about a few different clients with this one same theme that keeps coming up, well, that theme's going to relate to that person out there and that's going to grab them.
yeah.
But also, yes, feedback, totally.
What are some reoccurring, what do you call them? Pain points,
Pain
reoccurring pain points.
points. Yeah. So like I said before, I have so many different areas of my niche underneath perinatal mental health. So I have, infertility and family building. I have pregnancy loss, and then I have postpartum anxiety and postpartum depression. Then I have anxiety, depression, and motherhood.
Mm,
And then birth trauma or childhood trauma. That's another aspect. So all those people are all talking about different
mm,
things.
yeah.
What I primarily focus on in my content is postpartum anxiety and motherhood anxiety.
Why is that why is that what you speak about most?
So what I started doing when I first started my Instagram was I was speaking to everyone. I was speaking to pregnancy loss specifically because I have a lot of expertise treating and helping and working through that aspect. And so I was speaking to a lot of pregnancy loss clients, but the problem was that I also wasn't reaching the postpartum anxiety clients because that content was triggering and that postpartum anxiety content was triggering to the other half. So it was hard to speak to both. So what I decided was I was going to focus on motherhood. And I wasn't I do talk about pregnancy loss. It's on my website. I have a special certification through something called Star Legacy, and I make videos for them. And so that's how I have my connection there.
I find
Sorry,
that
I'm slow
really
down. Yeah.
just very interesting. I'm curious. I want to hear more about your thought process because it
Mhm.
actually, from my background, seems counterintuitive. It's working for you, so I'm not questioning
Oh.
you. But for me, I would have questioned, be like, well, why don't you speak to? Because you're not, and I'm not. I'm just want to learn
Mhm,
actually.
mhm. Yeah, yeah,
Is
sure.
like my mentality is, well, you're not speaking to everyone because you're still under the motherhood. Like you're not speaking to like OCD and you're not speaking to like,
Mhm,
whatever, like all these different
mhm,
other different types of anxieties and stuff and therapy set like situations. It's all like whether it be loss, whether it be
mhm,
postpartum, whether it be
mhm.
they're all under the motherhood. So I'm curious, like I would have thought that that would be like because then how do you reach the person that has the loss trauma or the
Mhm,
infertility trauma if you're
mhm.
speaking only about um, postpartum anxiety and depression? And I'm not.
Right.
I'm just curious because like
Yeah.
so,
So
so
what I've done is I focus each one of my areas of referral streams on different
oh,
things.
very interesting.
So my Instagram is postpartum
Very
anxiety,
interesting.
cycle breaking, millennial motherhood, boomers, and what they have to say. So I that's what I focus that on. TikTok, I also do a little bit of that, and so that I kind of lump together. I am connected with a lot of doctors that are connected with patients that have pregnancy loss. And I'm also a certified provider through Star Legacy Foundation, which specializes in it's a international organization that specializes in pregnancy loss and stillbirth and also does a lot of research. And also, on another note, all my therapist friends know that I do pregnancy
Mm,
loss. And that is where I get my pregnancy loss referrals from.
yeah, I see.
So I don't need to necessarily
Yeah, so you have
be
different in business terms, it'd be essentially streams of income, but streams
Mhm.
of referrals,
Correct.
essentially.
Yes.
Very interesting.
And then
Well, that makes
on
sense then. Yeah.
Yep, and then if you went into my website with my SEO, if you were to search birth trauma, you would see birth trauma
I
on my
actually really
website.
like that marketing model in the
Oh,
sense of
thank you.
like, oh, you could just be super niche into one. It's really interesting actually because it kind of goes counterintuitive to what a lot of people say to do
Mm,
online. But if you do it well, it could really work. Like if, hypothetically, if you had a mailing list, like an email list, like that really hypothetically only focus on this one topic, and then if people follow you all everywhere, I mean that would be an incentive for people to follow you everywhere because you're getting different content everywhere, which is
right,
really interesting. As opposed to like if you're posting the same thing on YouTube Shorts, TikTok, and like what's really the point of following you in all three things?
right,
Um,
right.
that's really an interesting
Yeah,
concept.
yeah. The other thing is that I don't wanna provide content that's triggering.
Sure.
So I what was happening and I spoke to my business coach about this. She said, "You'll probably grow slower over time if you talk to all these areas."
Hmm. Oh,
And
sure. Yeah. Yeah.
so I started focusing. And so also what was started to feel weird was I was talking about pregnancy loss and stillbirth, and then 2 weeks later I'd be talking about postpartum anxiety if somebody had a
So if
baby.
they follow, very
So they
interesting. So if
follow
they
me for
follow your
pregnant
pregnancy loss now that they don't have a baby, and now you're talking about having a baby,
Yes, exactly right.
very. So
Or I have a
that's
picture of
such
me
an
and my daughter in there.
interesting.
That's why I don't if I might have a picture of me and my daughter, I don't show her face, but the back of us. And some of
Yeah.
my
If
clients,
they just had a loss.
right.
It's very, very interesting, actually.
Hmm.
That's I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know how to
Yeah.
express what I'm trying to say, but I think that I don't know. It's a
Hmm.
really insightful, I guess, on your part, like that. I don't know. It's just
Thank
because I
you.
think a lot of businesses, even inside your own niche, would have been like, "Oh, I'm just going to talk about everything," and
Hmm.
how I could see how it would be harmful to
Right.
the end user. Um, just as a side note, I'd be curious if you also redirected though at the same time, be like, if you are interested in hearing more about this, check out
Hmm.
my mailing list or check out the whatever other
Hmm.
my website for
Hmm.
blogs or whatever the case would be,
Yeah.
because they might know somebody too. Like it's just
Yeah.
interesting, but that is a really
Yeah.
interesting.
The other thing is professionally. I have a child myself, and so I don't know emotionally and professionally if I want 20 clients who've experienced a stillbirth while I'm still in my experience as a mother and things like that.
Well, that was segues into my next question
Mhm.
of compartmentalization
Mhm.
for you. How, as specifically as a woman that's in childbearing
Yeah.
age
Yeah.
and you have a child, and
Mhm.
you said you're looking to potentially have more,
Mhm.
like how do you compartmentalize that in your own pregnancy journey?
Yeah, it's not easy. It's not easy at all. I had spent so many months being thinking about how I was going to tell my clients when I first was,
Wow.
pregnant in
Wow.
2023, and thinking a lot about when I was going to share that information,
Yeah, that's a
how I was going
that's
to
a heavy burden to carry,
how
especially wow.
mhm,
I don't. I
how to communicate that, right? And knowing that. So,
wow.
yeah, so
That's something you can hide too. So at some point they kind of
right,
realize.
right. So for my telehealth clients, I told them a little bit later. For the in-person, I told them a little bit sooner. And so
How do you share that information?
I definitely want to say the therapy room is a microcosm for the outer world. And I say this a lot to my
What does
clients.
that mean?
What that means is that my relationship with the client is similar to the relationships with so many other people in their life. But it could be a different, healthier relationship. But projection may happen. For instance, they might fall into people pleasing tendencies in the dynamic, right? Or they might really want to know I'm always going to be there for them, right? So that just knowing that it's a small snippet of how they might interact in the outer world. That being said, people will get pregnant around them. It's unavoidable.
Yeah.
It's a huge trigger. However, it's going to happen, right? So the therapy room could be an area for them to say what they want to say to a pregnant woman that they can't say out at ShopRite,
Yeah.
right? And I could hold that with them. Also, giving the opportunity to say, if you don't want to see me, that's okay. We don't have to see each other, or we could see each other on Zoom if that's easier for you.
Yeah.
Just giving them the opportunity and then looping back around and saying, how was that for you last week? When I did share that, what did that mean for you? How'd that feel? And then again, it goes back to the original theme, maybe. Feels like everyone's getting pregnant but me.
Little ERP therapy for you.
Yeah, exposure. Yes, yes, yes. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, very
definitely
interesting.
the idea of like, okay, like you could say what you want to say to me that you can't say to pregnant women. And I can hold that for you.
Yeah.
And I could be that bouncing off for you. But I also can say that that really sucks too. And this is a really sucky situation that I'm going to sit in front of you being pregnant and you've experienced this
Mm,
loss, right?
yeah.
Also, some clients will feel really horrified because they feel like they've traumatized me. Well, I've shared with you what's happened to me, and like I must have scarred you. And so none of that is important they don't need to know anything personal about my feelings or my ability. And so holding it together really and saying to them, like, are you scared that you're going to traumatize people in your life with telling them about X, Y, and Z, right? So it doesn't become about me. I become a reflection of the whole world.
Very therapist question, but yeah.
Yeah, very therapist. Yes, yes, very therapeutic. I know sometimes my clients are like, I know you were going to say that.
Yeah, it's
They're like,
fun.
I'm avoiding, and I know you're going to call me out on that. And I'm like, I'm not a good therapist if I don't tell you how it is.
Yeah, but just certain questions,
Yeah,
just very therapy questions.
very therapy.
How do
Yeah,
you feel about that?
I know. I'm very direct. I'm
Yeah,
very direct
yeah,
too. I'll say to them, what are you thinking right now?
yeah, yeah,
Or What does that bring up for you? What do you feel in your body, right? These are very,
Yeah.
direct
Yeah.
questions. But I'm not a fluffy therapist. I'm very, like, direct, like,
Yeah.
I'll dig up the stuff and we're
Yeah.
gonna address it.
I started therapy almost a year ago.
Okay. Yeah.
I have diagnosed OCD.
Okay.
And
Okay.
I didn't know
Yeah.
what it was for a long time,
Wow.
and
Okay.
then I finally figured it out a couple of years ago just from reading a blog post. I was like,
Yeah.
"Oh my gosh, that's me," like, and it
Okay.
just completely set me fr that was just that
Wow.
finding that blog post was the catalyst that after years of anxiety
Mhm.
was like, "Oh, I'm not these intrusive thoughts, or I'm
Right.
not crazy," and
Yeah.
then it was this process of, like, getting better just on my own of, like, realizing, "Oh, that's just OCD, it's not me."
Mhm.
And then it got to the point where, like, "Hey, I'm really done with this kinda thing," like, so I started therapy, but, like, just that being said, all the direct
Mm.
questions and, but a good therapist will make you, like it's exactly what you think it might be to some degree of, like, "Well, how do you feel about that?" But once you start answering that question, it's like, "Oh, wow," like, you just start unraveling things by speaking them out loud. It's
Yep.
like, "I never really thought about it that like, I never thought that I thought that," It's just
Right.
very interesting.
Right. Or I'll catch clients and I'll be like, "What does that mean? You're a failure?"
Yeah, and
And
then
they're
you're like,
like, "What,
"Oh, yeah, I guess if I guess I believe that, but
yeah.
I don't
Mhm.
really believe that,"
Mhm. Right, right, right. Yeah, and getting the courage to even show up to therapy.
Dude, let me tell you, I'm not joking with this,
It's
like,
really hard.
that was actually signing up was actually the
Yeah.
scariest thing I've ever done in my life.
Yeah.
I was so
Scared.
scared,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
hands down the scare, and
Yeah.
the only thing that pushed me to do it was the fact that I have we talk about the fact that I
Mm.
have a daughter, and
Mhm.
my thought process was like, me what I do in this situation is gonna teach her how to handle fear.
Mhm.
And if I decide that if I don't do it because I'm scared, then I teach her that we
Mhm.
back down in fear. And
Mm.
that was the only thing that made me actually to go.
Mhm.
Not that like, oh, I want to get better for her. It's just like I wanted to get better for myself, but
Mhm.
also just the fact that like if I just say I'm scared and I don't go, that's what I'm teaching her about fear. And
Mhm.
I was so scared. But it's changed my life. Like
Yeah.
actually changed my life. Like I am a different person.
I
Like
know,
it's
I know.
insane.
I think the fear of what you're gonna find out or what's gonna
Or
happen
fear of judgment, I think is a really big thing from other
from
people, or I
male
guess
perspective.
yeah, I don't
Mhm.
yeah, that's all I have, so,
Yeah, yeah,
um,
yeah, I'm curious.
fear of judgment of other people,
Mhm.
and then fear of judgment, from the therapist,
Yeah.
'cause you don't know if you're like, they could what if they think I'm crazy? What if they've never heard this before? All these things that are obviously not the
Yeah,
case,
yeah,
but
yeah.
you like, what if they've never heard about this before and
Yeah.
I actually do am there's a problem or blah, 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 and it's
But
so
there are also, like, there's always bad apples, and sometimes you have to try on the
mm.
shoe, right, to see if it fits, and sometimes you do have to try a few therapists or interview a few therapists first before you see, "Is this a good fit for me or not?"
Which goes back to the topic of niche therapy kind of thing, or the specialized therapy is a better word.
Yeah.
Because a friend of mine has, I see it as definitely OC, just
Mm.
like I see the same exact traits that I have.
Mm. Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
but she's been in therapy for her whole life, and it's never really worked because it was they were all specialized in their own areas, and it wasn't to treat
Mm.
what I see now as OCD, and
Yeah.
therefore they was doing all these things that were helping, but not really getting
Mhm.
to and it's just really
Yeah.
interesting how like now with this specialization, you really know that topic, and when you find that, you can really help these people as opposed to like
Correct.
a broad, okay, like I'm less anxious than I used to be, but like it doesn't really address the problem.
Right, right. So, yeah, definitely with OCD, there's ICBT and ERP, and those are the gold standards of treatment,
I don't know
and
what ICBT is, but I know
inference-based CBT, it helps a lot for perinatal OCD and postpartum OCD.
what is I don't even
Inference-based.
I don't know what that is.
Inference is like an assumption. Inference is like predicting the future.
Oh, okay.
Inference-based cognitive behavioral therapy. It's almost like taking the OCD, and I am not an expert in OCD, and I don't treat OCD, but OCD, sort of treating it like, why are you're a lot of the thoughts are going based on the worst case scenario, but that's not reality and that's not true. So stay here and now what you know to be true.
Yeah.
And just because you've seen, for instance, I'm just talking about perinatal OCD, might see on TikTok something horrible happens to a kid, they think it's going to happen to them.
Mhm.
And it's sort of like, that's not how that works. That's very separate.
Yeah.
That's not their story. That's not your story. And just because it happened to them doesn't mean it's going to happen to you. So it's using that base versus exposure, because exposure is very anxiety inducing.
I do ERP.
You do therapy,
Yeah.
yeah. So it's really intense
Yeah.
therapy. It's very hard for especially women in the postpartum period to do ERP. But ICBT is ERP is gold standard. ICBT is up and coming.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, what is the difference though? Like, I don't
So
know.
ERP is the actual exposure.
Exposure.
You
Yeah.
are going to do the
Yeah.
exposure.
Yeah.
Let's say you're afraid of snakes, and so you're thinking of a snake. Then
Yeah.
you're, gonna, draw a snake.
Watch a
Then
snake on
right,
YouTube,
right,
or
yeah. So you're
then
gonna
you're gonna
work.
buy a snake.
Yes, you're gonna work up to the
Yeah.
highest level. ICBT, and I'm not trained in ICBT, but a few of my colleagues do it. ICBT is more of using your cognitive to accept the truth of here and now, and also visualizing. Like, so cognitive behavioral therapy is accessing different parts of your brain and your thought process and slowing it down and interrupting.
Ah, I see.
So
Yeah.
for
Yeah. Yeah.
instance, it's like, I saw that TikTok video, that means that
Yeah.
this is gonna happen to me. It's stopping that process
Yes. I see.
in total and slowing that down.
Yes.
But yeah, you need a specialized provider, or else you're not gonna get good treatment. And speaking of which, I do something called EMDR. I don't know if you've heard of it before. It's eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. Now, it sounds really like crazy, wild thing, but it's evidence-based, and it's the gold standard treatment for PTSD and trauma.
So what does that look
Yeah.
like?
So all this to say is that I had done CBT with all my clients for many, many, many years, and I was noticing that the same thing. There was something that was missing. They told me that they told me, "I know this to be true, but I can't believe it. I can't believe it. I don't know why. There's something else that's happening." Example: child is sick. They think something really tragic and traumatic is going to happen. That's not true or evidence based. So I would address
Yeah.
that. Now, looking at it from a trauma perspective, I'm going back and finding out from them, where do they first feel that something bad was going to happen, or that they were unsafe.
Like back
Way
then.
back. We're
Yeah.
starting like childhood, and there's even pre-verbal trauma that could happen. So when's your first memory? And then we are actually doing something called bilateral stimulation. So we use buzzers or eye movements, and you literally will follow my fingers, and that actually, it does a few things. First, it mimics REM sleep, and REM is your eye movements move back and forth, deeper processing. The second thing is it taxes your working memory, so you're not able to cognitively think about the trauma. It's kind of complicated, but you can't cognitively think about the trauma, so your brain will rewire itself. So with EMDR, what I do is we talk about the different traumatic events in their life, and I use it for birth trauma, and I use it for pregnancy loss. I also use it for other things, but those are my areas really where I use it. Let's just use a basic example: traumatic birth. Okay. They have a traumatic birth. They're weeks out from having the birth, and they are really anxious. Now they think it's postpartum anxiety, and that's a symptom, but the symptom is where the trauma started. And the trauma might have been feeling I'm unsafe, but maybe that's the theme of their whole life. So we look at the theme, the thread, and we go back to the first time they ever thought that, and we reprocess that memory.
Mm.
And by reprocessing, we're bringing up the memory again, and we're using bilateral stimulation. And actually, you'll actually do a network. You'll find the client will go up, down, up, down, up, down to a more positive neutral. For instance, they might want to look back on the birth trauma and say, "I'm a survivor." But instead, they say, "I'm a failure." So EMDR moves them to "I'm a survivor."
Very, very interesting.
Yeah, a lot.
It's just very interesting.
Yeah, we could talk for hours
Yeah,
about
it's
it. Yeah.
very, very, very
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah. And so that heals the part of them that's still stuck.
It's very interesting to see as a society how we're like I guess a shift on how
Mhm.
I guess a shift to healing.
Yes.
And I'm gonna be very frank, and you might
Mhm.
judge me on this, but
No.
like I think that sometimes it gets like the macho man in society, or at least myself, is
Mhm.
like, oh, it's just healing, and like
Mhm.
you know,
Mhm.
like, and I understand that, but
Mhm.
also I think that what's happened is society's like up until really like 1950, like the world's constantly in survival mode,
Mhm.
like
Mhm.
just trying to actually like make it to like
Mhm.
next year or tomorrow. And now post World War II, like the world has totally shifted from survival to thriving. And when you're in survival mode, you can't focus on like the trauma. You just
Mm,
can't, because like you need to actually like make food or else you die.
mhm,
And we're not in that anymore. So now we have this time of like, oh, we actually can, we don't have to live miserable. And like, granted, now 70 years ago,
mhm,
like before that, like the alcoholism rate was way
mhm,
high. Like, there's a
mhm,
lot of things that like we
mhm,
cope differently,
mhm.
but it's very interesting to see like, oh, actually, like you don't have to live traumatically.
Right. You
And
don't have to live traumatically. And also motherhood has changed so much, and the expectations and the balance that's needed for, especially for a working mother, right? And all those aspects that go into it, and the way that our society doesn't set mothers up for success anywhere, right? There's no support anywhere in terms of like actual structural supports. In other countries, they have visiting nurses for free that come
mhm,
and check in, and confinement periods in Asia where you stay in your home for 30 days and your family cooks for you and dotes on you. You don't have.
which is a bit more of the traditional system of like how things were
Correct.
prior to the modern world.
Right, correct. Now we have no benefits
Mm,
to that can support women in leave, and especially their partners in leave as well.
mm,
And so it's sort of like this, like, let's just keep going. Like the ignored mother is just like you're ignored by society, you're not seen.
mm,
And so it's sort of like this ongoing thing that happens,
yeah.
and society just continues to, you know, forget that you're a mom.
Hmm.
I really do say that, especially for working moms, it's work like you don't have a kid, and parent like you don't work. And it just doesn't work very well in America. It just does not,
Wow,
especially with.
that's a interesting quote.
Oh, thank you.
I'm gonna write that one down because I don't
Thank you. You
want
should
to.
follow me on Threads, because
Oh, okay.
Threads, I say some really interesting
Yeah.
things that has really, I'm actually surprised. Sometimes I just have these like thoughts. Like I had said that, society for men. So I said the society says that the bar for male participants in the household is is just participation. But the bar for women is just self-erasure.
Meaning what?
You lose your identity as a mom. Society wants you to lose your identity as a mom.
In what sense?
It doesn't support a woman to have needs of her own. For instance, if I
Mm,
were to go out to dinner, I would probably have some mom guilt.
mhm,
My husband goes to the gym very happily
mhm.
and doesn't think about
How
those
do you
types of
fix
things.
that?
How do you fix that? Well, we have to see our mothers as humans too, right?
Sure.
As humans that with needs and wants and expectations, instead of just you chose this and you're a mom and suck it up, right? And that's a part of you. You are a mom, that's part of you. But there's all these other parts of you, but society doesn't let that happen, right? What happens if a mom works? You're letting other people take care of your kids. Like, how could you let other people raise your kids? How could you? It's the idea is that you're a mother and mother should be mother, and that's it.
Mm,
But fathers can do all these other things.
yeah. Well, I think it's an old school mentality that's kind of shifted into this different world.
Yeah.
That
Mhm.
was the case for so long,
Mhm.
and then all of a sudden now it's not. And I think that people are still holding on to those values when it's not realistic anymore. I mean, look,
Right.
myself included, I fall into that. My wife and I both fall into that
Yeah,
trap
of
very easily
course.
because, I mean, that's how we grew up and that's what we
Yeah.
thought and this and that. But we're also trying to be like, wait, this isn't
Mhm.
working,
Right.
or
Right.
it's not. Or we talked about the fact that
Mm.
my wife and I split childcare, and like
Mhm.
sometimes that's hard, and
Yep.
like being like, hold on, I didn't necessarily expect my life to look like, but it's our
Mhm.
reality, and you have to accept back to
Mhm.
acceptance. You have to
Yeah.
accept that, and it's a very
Yeah.
interesting thing.
Just the idea that we need to support moms more, and if we supported moms more, then moms would feel less
How do you
horrible.
practically support moms?
You expect more of their partner.
Like the husband kind of thing, like have expect him to do more.
Expecting that things are not like they used to be, and
Mm.
the mom needs more support. For
What does
instance,
support
mental
look
load.
like?
I'm talking like mental load. I'm talking like,
I'm also personally asking to
yeah, most of the
help
yeah,
my marriage out.
taking notes. Yeah, how to
So
be a better
like
husband. No, I'm
what
kidding.
is that? Yeah, what does that look like?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. So I mean, let me just backtrack for a second and talk about, just for a moment, mom rage and like mom anger and frustration. Mom rage happens when there's unmet needs, when women feel piled upon and they just want to, like, they just feel like they're gonna like lose control, and they might yell and they might feel like they want to shut down, and um, that usually happens because their needs aren't being met. And so usually a lot of default things end up on the woman, right? Calling the doctor, making sure there's toilet paper, making sure all the clothes are sized up, packing up all the clothes, making sure all the presents are bought for a birthday party, scheduling plans, right? On top of working.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot. So if I were to compare my mental load with my husband's mental load, well, he doesn't think about most of those things, right? But I have to include him in on my mental load and expect him to help me with the mental load of the household, or else I'm going to get resentful and mean. And you do have a lot of women that don't feel like their husbands step up, and I'm talking heterosexual couple here when I say husband and woman, mother. But with that, it's you can expect more. You can say, "This is my mental load. What's your mental load?" And and men have a mental load too of other stuff that they have. But let's compare and let's see how we can help each other as a collective unit.
Mm-hmm.
How can we work together to get these things solved? And sometimes my capacity is lower than his capacity. Sometimes he's able to take on more. Sometimes I'm able to take on more based on little things, how I slept, my work schedule, right? But he might be able to, let's say, stop the cleaners and pick up our cleaners one day. And that's really helpful for our family and our collective unit instead of assuming that I'm going to do it
Yeah.
because that's whatever role.
It boils down to communication.
Communication. The other thing is with communication is a lot of anxious moms do have difficulty letting go of control. So
Sure.
the idea of I can only do it right and you're going to do it wrong and you never do it right and I can't trust you to do it right. So I'm not going to ever ask you because you do it wrong anyway and that's annoying to me. And I say, you have to teach your partner what you need. Like, do you think that, like, for instance, my husband might not have known certain ways that I do things. Why would I get mad at him without letting him know the way that I do things? And maybe he does things better. And sometimes he does. And so expecting that you guys are a collective unit working together to better your children and your household.
Mm.
And also not being nitpicky over certain things and letting certain things go.
Mm.
I'm just thinking of an example. He might not, dress my daughter the way that I dress my daughter. And she might be all mismatchy. Does that matter to some people? Some people would say, yes, he should be matching it perfectly. I say, just let it go. He's matching them and he's doing what he thinks is best.
Yeah.
And then just being able to let go of that
Mm-hmm.
and say, it's okay. Maybe he puts them to bed differently. Maybe they have, they eat chocolate chip pancakes instead of eggs, just this is their way of doing it. And maybe that's okay. Maybe that doesn't have to be so bad.
Very interesting. Yeah, it's very. Just looking back in my marriage,
Yeah.
but also the marriages of so many of my friends that I have is
Yes.
like, these issues are very, very, very common, and
Mhm.
learning to communicate on both sides of
Uh-huh.
them, just
And it
navigating.
impacts the sex life a lot. And a lot of my clients, their husbands are not understanding of the mental load on why they're so burnt out and they don't want to engage in sex at night or on the weekends and things like that. And I think that men might fail sometimes to realize that helping with the mental load is actually foreplay.
Mhm.
Like, essentially, you are helping lessen the burden for her so she's not so overwhelmed. That's a sign of love and respect. And therefore, she might be able to relax and appreciate you more. But if she has to do everything, then you just become another child. So
Yeah.
it's just, she's not going to want to have sex with her. You know what I mean? Like, you know?
Yeah. Wow,
So,
when you put it that way.
right, exactly. She doesn't want to be picking up your socks. Like,
Well, touche. That's a
I'm just
really,
saying,
really, really great analogy.
not to
Wow.
be crude, but
But you're right. That's a fair blow. Wow.
yeah.
That's a fair
And I
blow.
tell my moms that they need to relax too and let it
No,
go,
on both
right?
sides, but that's a very fair blow because yeah, wow. I mean, at least for that one stung a little bit.
You'll
But
be
you're
picking up
right.
your socks. You'll be doing stuff. Your wife will be like, what just happened?
Wow, that
You're
was
like, I just
crazy.
got therapy for an hour and a
Yeah.
half.
That was an interesting. Well, on that note,
On that note, yeah, yeah. No, but it's important. It's important it's just important. Yeah, yeah. So that's about my practice.
Yeah.
And no, but I specialize in all these areas and
Wow.
I work with so many
Yeah.
couples and so many women all the time that this is stuff I see
Yes,
all
sure.
the time, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times,
Yeah,
over
thousands
and
of
over.
hours worth of it.
Thousands and thousands of hours of worth. Yes.
Well, to wrap it up though, the one
Yes.
thing I do want to know is like, where do you see your business, your practice in the next couple of years? Like, what's the goal?
Yeah, it's a great question. I am just kind of right now enjoying the ride.
Mm,
I am very grateful to have a full practice. I still can somewhat maybe sometimes accept some clients here and there as people fall out. I have a waiting list sometimes, but my goal is right now to just enjoy it. I don't know what the future holds. I would love to do more business consulting of other therapists, and help them grow their practice. I don't know if group practice ownership is in the future for me,
mm,
as in hiring out. It's something I've thought about, but I'm not sure.
yeah.
I'm not sure. I think I'm just kind of enjoying my practice and the work that I do with my clients.
The last question I'll ask is, what is one thing that you know now in your career that you wish you knew when you first started out?
So, what I wish I knew when I first started was to allow clients to humble me and not be thrown for a loop. Allow them to tell me their stories and allow me to grow and say sorry and learn that I'm human too and I mess up and I'm not perfect or anything like that. I'm just going to give a short example. When I first started as a social worker, I cross covered not only spinal cord injury but some medical surgery patients. And I didn't read the chart thoroughly. And I didn't realize that the client I was talking to in the hospital bed what did not have any legs. Okay? So one of the questions that a social worker asks is what equipment do you use and how do you move around in your home or in the community? And so I went in there very naively and I got screamed at because I said to him, "Do you use a walker?" Or do you and he said, "How the F do you think I walk? Or I don't walk. I have no legs." And he lifted up the thing and showed me he had no legs. And I was 23 years old standing like just like, "Oh my gosh." And he was right. I was wrong. I assumed things about him. I did not look at the chart as thoroughly as I should have. And and that was a huge lesson for me. A lesson was that let clients tell you who they are. Let them
Mm,
be who they are and don't argue with them. Let him feel his feelings. Yeah. I'm sure a lot of people in society do that to him and marginalize him and put him down or assume things about him. And I was just another person to do that.
mm,
And so trying not to do that to my clients,
very
being
interesting.
really aware.
Well, thank you for
Yes.
sharing, and thank you for sharing
Thank
your story.
you.
It's been a very, very interesting
Yes,
conversation.
it has. It's been lovely.
Yeah, it was a
Yeah.
pleasure. So I look forward to seeing where the business goes, and thank you
Yes,
so much for
thank
your time.
you. Thank you
Absolutely.
so much.
Yeah.